Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Joshua Molina. It's such a pleasure today to be here with Austin Herlihy, commercial real estate broker for Radius and an all-around likable, good guy. I always enjoy talking to you about commercial real estate trends, and I appreciate you as a source. You know, you're the smart one, and you make me look smarter in my reporting, so I appreciate it. Hey, Austin. Well, let me start off, Austin. How you doing today? How's everything going in the new year?
I'm great. Thank you, Josh.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey, I want to talk to you because I've been writing about La Cumbre Plaza recently, and I've been podcasting about it. And people are really into this topic. They're really fascinated by what's going to happen with La Cumbre Plaza. There's this historic connection for a lot of people to that mall. It's been there forever. We already lost Sears. Now I reported that Macy's is going to go away at some point once they could work out a development deal. Probably 2028 is like when it would happen. And so I wanted to talk to you because you're an expert on commercial real estate. Now there's a housing component and a specific plan part of this, but I wanted to ask you, Austin, what's going on with La Cumbre Plaza? And do you see this area as the future of housing? Do you see this as a housing retail center? What's it going to be like to lose Macy's? Let's talk about the plaza and your views on what is the future of this really, really important 31 acres in Santa Barbara.
So I think, the state of California is basically said that they want to have a certain amount of housing in our community. It's called the RENA numbers. And I think that location is a great site for the city to get a lot of density. And we're a little nervous about, I'm nervous about if the city doesn't hit their RENA numbers, that it could really change our downtown, and the state could come in and say, hey, look, we'd like to see 12-story buildings downtown. And as a real estate guy, obviously, I love selling more expensive buildings, but I don't think it's the best thing for our community to have, 12-story buildings. So I think that this site really is a great spot. I think that, the big box retail is definitely a dying breed. You've seen it now with Macy's leaving downtown, Nordstrom's leaving downtown. So I think it's a great alternative. And I read your article. I reviewed the plans. I think that it was thoughtfully done. The 2 stories out on the corners and out on the street, really kind of protects that feeling of a canyonization. And then they really push their density up in the middle, where I don't think it'll give that same sort of effect to the community driving down the streets. I also reviewed the traffic aspect of it and the streets going through the middle and so forth. Yep. And I think that could actually help the traffic situation down there. I know that you're adding a ton of bodies and cars, but right now the Upper State Street doesn't seem to have a very good traffic flow the way it is right now.
Right. It's a mess. It gets congested up there very easily. I got to tell you though, and you're a dad, maybe you're not like me, but a couple days before Christmas, I'm inside Macy's, and I've been inside Macy's a couple days before Christmas for several years. I guess the only change is I order online now and then just pick up, so I don't have to wander like a dummy all the way through, up and down the escalator. I think there's an emotional attachment that people have to sort of the last big box kind of old 80s 90s department store type in Santa Barbara. So I think people are kind of coming to grips with, hey, we're not going to have a Sears. We already lost the other Macy's. Nordstrom is gone. We're not going to have that big store to go to. Part of the conversation with this project by Mark and Jim Taylor is the city wants to create a specific plan for La Cumbre Plaza, and that's a technical term. And so, in short, essentially they want to come up with a development agreement with all of the landholders there, all the property owners, and come up with something that is clear in terms of what they're going to get out of it, what the developers can expect out of it, and it can be planned in a cohesive way. We've seen this in other spots around Santa Barbara. It's a way for both sides to have more and less control, and with a big project and a big property, it seems to make sense. What do you think about the rest of the plaza? I mean, do you think you'd like to see housing there and the rest of it? And does the city have a point of, hey, let's plan all of this together, let's not do it separately?
Well, first, I wanted to just touch on what your first comment about Macy's. It's funny because my mother-in-law came up to me a week ago and said, you know, that Macy's is leaving. That's where I get all my makeup. I can't buy this stuff online, you know? And so I heard it from her as well. She was like, you can't let Macy's go. But the reality is Macy's is going, and there's nothing, you know, anyone can probably really do about it. It's a massive shift in what's happening in the world with retail. As to the Taylors and the specific plan, I agree with the city that there should be a specific plan. However, to get 3 property owners and the city on the same page is going to be extremely difficult, and it's going to take a lot of time. And so I can see where the Taylors are also saying, we don't want to wait for the Sears owner to figure out what they're going to do there. We don't want to have to deal with Macerich, which is a big, you know, publicly traded company, or I don't know if they're publicly traded or not, but they're a big REIT of some sort, and try to make decisions with all these people, including the city, who doesn't make decisions very fast either. So I agree with the city that there should be a specific plan, but I also agree with the Taylors that I wouldn't want to wait around for everybody else and try to figure it out with multiple parties, because everyone's going to be looking out for the best interest.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you can't blame the Taylors. I mean, they have a project. They've submitted an application. They're ready to go. Obviously, like, who would be like, sure, we'll wait. That doesn't make a whole lot of economic and financial sense. And they bought that property in 2021. And obviously, it takes a long time. You know this. It isn't as though you just have the money in your pocket and you buy some big piece of property and then the next day you're getting a return on your investment. It takes forever. It takes years, so obviously the sooner they could go, the better. There's a political issue there, though, with the specific plan and the city and the way that they are approaching it, and their battle with SBCAG, and the fact that there's this tension between Santa Barbara's planning process and also what money they could have had. They could have had $1.1 million from the state to help with the specific plan, and that's sort of lost. So we're going to see how that plays out. It's not going away, and the city's still going to have control over that Taylor project. They're still going, they're going to fuss about it, and they're going to nitpick, and they're going to do everything they can to exercise control, because the other part of it is there's the other half of Santa Barbara who says, no, we don't want housing there. It's too big. It's too tall. It's going to ruin Santa Barbara. And so it's going to be a gnarly battle for several years on multiple fronts. What about the rest of the plaza, Austin? Do you ever go to, the area in the middle where there's a few stores there? There's a lot of salons now, and there's art galleries. Of course, I go to that game store, every holiday season. Do you see the mall based separate from Macy's and Sears being vibrant long term? Can Macerich keep it going?
I think housing would help it.
Mm-hmm.
I think without the housing, I think it's not going to survive the way it is. And I think Macerich would probably sell it if they could, but I don't know that anyone's been that interested in buying their position. I know that it was under contract a couple of years ago, but that had fallen apart. And I got to think that, Macerich is trying to hold on to whatever value they think they they can get for it. But my guess is the market's a lot different than what they think it's probably worth. So in my experience, I would think that putting housing, like maybe that strip can survive, and you put housing at Sears and you put housing over at the Macy's, and I think that would help it. I don't personally go there. I go there maybe to lure restaurant every once in a while. I know my wife goes to Bristol Farms and Core Power Yoga over there, but no, I don't know really the last time I walked through the middle of the mall.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, Bristol Farms. I'm not even counting that side of the mall as the mall, because they're not going anywhere. That's like the good side. That's the that's the busy side. I guess going back to your housing thing, and then I want to move on to like other parts of the town, is I think there's concern that how much housing is too much. And so the city is saying, we can get up to 2,000 with the specific plan. But if we just allow the Taylor project to go through, that's 685, it sort of limits any more housing that we can get, because we're not going to really know how that housing is going to affect the community until we see it on the ground. And when we talk about those state pressures, do you think that it could come back to bite the county and its RHNA numbers and the city by allowing too much too early, when maybe you could have had 1,000 really good units in that area that the community didn't hate, as opposed to 685 that maybe a lot of people don't like? I mean, do you see any, like, maybe you need to take one step back here in order to take 2 steps forward?
Well, I think both parties potentially have issues, right? I think the city definitely has potential issues if the state comes in. And I think it's something that our residents don't quite understand, is the pressure that the state is putting on everybody. And on one hand, people are complaining that housing's too expensive in Santa Barbara, that Gelson's or Bristol Farms is busing people in from LA because people can't find housing to work here, or to live here and work here. And, so we need housing. And if we don't do something about it, then the state's going to come in and they're going to start telling us what needs to happen. And I think that would be catastrophic to our community. I think we can do it in a responsible way. That I'd rather see there be more housing on Upper State Street than downtown becoming, a much different downtown. I'd like to see housing downtown, but I don't want to see towers downtown. I don't want to see 10-story buildings or whatever it is, right? I think that the La Cumbre Mall is a good place to make a serious dent in the RHNA numbers and show the state that the city's really trying hard. I think the Taylors have some risk by, obviously going in early here and trying to force I don't want to say the word force, but I think they risk, getting a lot of backlash from the city and the community. And however, when I reviewed their plan, I thought it was pretty thoughtful as far as how to get the density and to not canonize the streets and so forth. So maybe there needs to be a little bit better explanation to the people, to the community itself, as to how they designed it and why they designed it and so forth, and what they had in mind to, preserve the feel of the community, to A, hit our more housing numbers, but B, do it in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, and I think that's one point that I agree with anyone on, is in terms of the Taylor project. The Taylor project, the public relations outreach for that has not been very good at all, because the only way we know about it is through an SB-CAG meeting that nobody pays attention to except me and Nick Welsh. And we're writing about it in the context of the political drama of Doss Williams bashing city planners, and it's like, that's a great story because Doss is a former city of Santa Barbara guy, and he's a total pro-government guy, and here he is bashing his former allies and friends. And so that's the story, right? But lost in the middle is, it's odd, the 685 unit should have been like a hey, we're gonna do a community meeting on this project, or we're gonna go to the council, we're gonna tell you about what it is. And that's how you get out front. When you think back of Cottage Hospital and their rebuild 20 years ago, it's like, oh, think of all those meetings they had. And it was always, hey, we're at the beginning and you're going to be a part of this, right? And that's what you have to do with the community. You can't do things sort of back end privately, because then you lose control, and here you go. Now it's this fight over La Cumbre Plaza. But let's shift gears. We talk about downtown and stage.
Well, hold on 1 second. So you can't be surprised that politicians are blaming other government groups for this and that, right? I mean, that's been kind of par for the course for everyone. And I think, the Taylors are pretty sharp people. I would think that they're probably going to have some sort of outreach at some point where they can explain it in a better way, would be my guess. I would be surprised if they didn't, but I'm sure right now they're just trying to, get it in front of the city and get initial thoughts from their standpoint versus the community yet.
Yeah. And I think I call him Mark. It's Matthew Taylor.
Yeah, it's Matthew.
Great guy. I mean, he is definitely the kind of guy you want as the face of this kind of project, because he's really cool and can explain it really well. But I guess he's learning how to unveil a project in Santa Barbara, because things can go right or they can go haywire really quickly. Downtown State Street, are things getting better there? There's all this talk about the promenade, the outdoor dining that seems to dominate everything. The 500 block. Are we seeing fewer storefront vacancies? How bad is it, Austin? Is it getting any better?
It's not getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing will get better until there is some sort of resolution with the mall. I know that the lender on the mall went out for offers to purchase their position in the mall about a month ago. I don't know how that shook out. I don't know if they've selected someone, but I don't see State Street, at least the 700, 800, 900 block changing until there's some cohesive ownership of that mall in a plan.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, if there was just a plan and the city and some developer got together and they said, this is what we're going to do, I think you would see a huge change right away. I think people would start coming in and saying, I want to get in now. By lease rates are 60% off of what they were in the prime time of 8-9 years ago. And I think you'd see a lot of cool local businesses wanting to get in there before everything started to take shape. But as of now, I've heard nothing. And I don't think anything's really going to change. The one thing that has changed is this AB 2907 regarding the parking near transit stations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you wrote an article about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
That's not going to help State Street, because what it's going to help is the funk zone.
Right.
And you're going to see the funk zone, which traditionally had a lot of use issues based on parking, because they're all traditionally built as industrial buildings. That industrial buildings are parked way less than retail or office or or different in other uses, right? And so now all those warehouse buildings down there can be restaurants, they can be gyms, they can be office space without any parking constraints. And I'm a believer in that the funk zone doesn't really need parking. I know some people disagree with me, but I think that most people that go down there will take an Uber or ride a bike or something along those lines and enjoy themselves down there and come home, because it's easier than going down there and finding parking. And so I think, for a restaurant to be successful down there, they don't need 4 per thousand parking. People are going to come. Whereas like if you're in Goleta and you have no parking, no one's going to walk there or probably Uber there or whatever. You need to have parking in a situation like that. And State Street has had parking because of the zone of benefit and all the downtown parking lots. And so all of State Street has not had any parking restrictions for many years for use. So I think you're going to see a lot of new businesses opening up in the funk zone. I think the funk zone is going to probably ignite quite a bit here in the next couple of years. And until the city and some developer gets selected to transform Paseo Nuevo, I don't see any change.
Right. Yeah, this is a theme here. These politicians are, maybe they're the problem, not doing anything, doing too much, and all of a sudden the state comes in and says, well, if you're going to do anything, then you're just going to have to live with it, So wasn't there some talk about how the bank took control of Paseo Nuevo and they were looking now for buyers? Nobody wants to buy it. Is it too expensive? It's too much of an investment, or too much uncertainty, or what have you heard about the fate of Paseo Nuevo?
I know that there have been offers made. I haven't represented anybody in making any offers on the mall, but I do know for a fact there's some groups that I currently have the 801 State Street for sale, which is where the old Brat House used to be.
Oh yeah.
Which is right in the middle of the mall. And so I've been contacted by a couple different groups that I know had made offers because they're interested. If obviously they bought that, they would want to probably buy this building and so forth. So I know that there's interested parties. I just don't know whether they've been selected or what their plans are for the project. I know it's complicated because I think the city has a 35-year ground lease or something like that. And I don't know that the city, I think I heard from someone, I can't remember who it was, but can't really sign a ground lease longer than 50 years. Something along the lines of, some sort of jurisdiction within the city that they can't sign ground leases longer than that. Which changes the financeability of doing a project there. Most long-term, big, large development projects, like we did the Wright property down there, they're 99-year ground leases. The Hotel California, when we did that ground lease, was 99-year ground lease. So it gives somebody a lot longer runway to depreciate their asset. And I think a 35-year runway is not probably enough for a lender to get behind.
So the city's
the city's going to have to probably change their tune a little bit and offer up a longer ground lease, and hopefully they can get something in return. I mean, I from what I understand, it's not a very lucrative ground lease. That the city had structured the ground lease because Macy's was going to provide something like $17 million a year in sales tax. And so the ground lease was super cheap, and they were going to make it all up on the sales tax. And I think they did for a long time. And I think it probably worked out really well for many years. But I think now you're seeing that there's no income, no sales tax, and a really low ground lease. So seems to me like the city could find a good developer that they trust and want to work with and offer them a longer term ground lease and probably get more ground lease income coming in.
Yeah, it's going to take some.
That makes too much sense, though.
Yeah, that would make too much sense. I was about to say it's going to take some somebody at City Hall to do that, or some elected to sort of take the lead, and we know that's not going to happen. So, good luck with that. All right, let's move on. I want to talk to you about the whole hotel craze. Last time we talked, you were talking about how it's a really good time to get into the hotel business, to invest in them, to buy them. Whereas everything changes, hotel owners can fluctuate their rates, and so you can kind of charge more, and it's a good investment. Locals are going to want to take trips to Santa Barbara, even if the international market is down. Are we still there? What's going on with the hotel trends?
So, hindsight, the time to purchase hotels was, right after the pandemic, because we saw a massive push in average daily rates and we saw a lot of tourism, and you can see it by just what people are charging for hotel rooms in Santa Barbara right now. I mean, it's really, really expensive to get a hotel. Even a halfway decent one is pretty expensive. The thing that's changed the most in the last 9 months is interest rates. And the way that commercial real estate is sold is based on cap rates, and cap rates aren't factored with debt. But once you start putting in debt, you have what's called a yield. And if you're borrowing at 2.5%, then buying something at a 5% cap rate has positive leverage, right? So now your return's higher than your debt service. Now you're talking 6.5% debt. So that means that the return on the real estate has to be at a much higher level. So what would maybe been a 5% return needs to be now a 7 or 7.5% return for people to make sense with the debt, because you don't want to have negative leverage. You don't want to be borrowing at 7% and buying at a 5%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Therefore, the values now are going to have to go down. And so that's what's happening across the board with commercial real estate right now. Is the interest rates are our biggest challenge. Values were set at 4 and 5% cap rates when interest rates were at 2.5 to 3.5%. And now with the massive push in interest rates, the returns are have to go up, which means the value of the properties are going to go down, which is really unfortunate. So, but it is kind of what it is.
So we're not at that place that we were before. Okay. What do you think of this hotel going in where the Scientology building was? You're going to help State Street?
Yeah, I think it's a great hotel. But going back, the hotels are still doing really well. So anyone that owned a hotel and had good debt put in place in the last 3 years
locked it in,
is looking really, really good.
Right.
The problem is selling hotels right now. And so I think a lot of the people aren't interested in selling at 20-25% discounts off of where it was a year ago.
Right. Yeah.
So going back to 524 State, the former Scientology building. Yeah, I walked that hotel maybe like a month ago with the owners, and it's really cool. It's very hip. It's got small rooms, which I think everyone kind of expected, and it's very similar to the Indigo Hotel that we had sold a year ago with the kind of the European style rooms. But I think in that location, it'll do very well with that type of room. I don't think people that want to stay there are wanting to sit in their room all day long. They want to park their bags and sleep there, but get out of, on the town and have some fun.
Mm-hmm. What are they, like 200 to 300 square feet, or how big are these hotel rooms? They're small? Or?
Yeah, I would say most of them are under 300 square feet.
Under 300 square feet.
It's pretty much a bed and a bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
And some room to walk in between.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's going to open up soon, so everyone be checking that out. When they roll that out.
The lobby's beautiful. Their
fire pit
views are really nice. Yeah, it's
roof.
It's pretty cool. It was very. I think a lot of thought went into the design of it, and I think the community is going to be pretty impressed with it. I think there's like a bar downstairs that'll be open to everyone, and it looks pretty hip. It looks like a fun place that I'd like to hang out.
Yeah, no, I definitely saw those renderings, and they look great. We started, Austin, talking about Cumbre Plaza and how Macy's has to go just because it's, probably getting a really, really low lease there to even be able to survive in the first place. They're not making what they were making in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And we have a mall that's sort of shifting to experiential type of stuff, like the salons that I mentioned, and the galleries and the restaurants. But if you come out to Goleta and you go to the Camino Real marketplace, that place is packed all the time.
It's happening. It really is. I mean, that center is.
So what's the difference? What's going on here?
I think there's a couple things. I think that a lot of people drive out to Goleta from Montecito, from Carp, from everywhere to go to Costco or Home Depot, right? So that's a big draw, those two anchor tenants. I think the city of Goleta doesn't really have a downtown. Old Town's not somewhere where people hang out. And that center has kind of become the downtown of Goleta. That's where people go to have dinner. That's where people go to do stuff, go to the movies, etc. And so, for lack of a better word, that's their downtown corridor for retail.
Yeah. Yeah. I live out in Goleta with the movie theater, it's the Starbucks, it's the Los Agaves, everywhere, like every one of those businesses, I think, except for Ulta Beauty, I've been inside in that mall.
And I think they're all doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I think the center is very successful. I've met with the owners a couple of times with different tenants, but they've done a really good job of mixing in local tenants. And they've all, I think, been pretty successful.
The C's Candy left downtown in Paseo Nuevo to go to Goleta and Camino Real. We'll see how long they last there, but that's bold. That's a big deal right there. To say, hey, we'd rather be out there. How much of it, Austin, is just better management? We know Macerich is not a local company, but how much of it is just, hey, we're managing Camino Real in a very active way, and we're making sure we're bringing in the right tenants, we're monitoring it. It's not working, we're looking. We're thinking about what works best for the community. Does that play a role?
Yes. I think it's kind of more of a strategy, right? So if you look at the Camino Real, it's really kind of your daily service stuff.
Yeah.
It's not, before Macerich had like Tiffany's and, all the different J. Crew and all that sort of stuff people are buying online.
Right.
But I think that you go to Camino Real and it's usually for entertainment or restaurants or things that people go to on a daily to go for whatever their needs are, right? And I think Costco's a massive draw. I think all the students go there. I think anyone from Carpinteria up goes to Costco. So it's a pretty successful center. They've done a good job.
Yeah. You do have the families who live out here and the students who live out here. And then, like you said, the commuters who come out to Costco and Home Depot. And, you got Ross out here, and that place is super popular all the time. You mentioned Old Town Goleta. I grew up here. Old Town Goleta looks a lot like it did when I was a kid. The city of Goleta's changing the parking there, and I'm not sold on that's going to do anything other than be sort of a use of, grant money. But, when I'm downtown, I'm looking, I see the Radius commercial signs, I see the Hayes signs, Jason Yeager signs, I see all kinds of commercial real estate signs. When I'm in Old Town Goleta, I don't see very many commercial real estate signs. And so obviously it's a different kind of flavor out there. It is busy. It is popular. I mean, if you go to try to park there, you can't, and Santa Cruz Market and all the little stores that cater to the local community are usually really busy. Would you call Old Town a success through that lens? Why is there not more investment into that area to bring some other kind of storefronts there?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think that there's a lot of little properties there, and there's not any ownership that owns a large piece of it where they can make a significant change. Whether it's a success in some people's eyes. It's probably not a success in other people's eyes. I mean, it's a success in the standpoint that doesn't look like there's a ton of vacancy there.
Right.
It looks like the community uses it, but it's mixed with, there's auto body repair next to this or that, or it's not a good mixture of right. And so I think if someone ever could buy enough of it, I think it could be pretty successful.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like the center across the street, I'm blanking on it right now, or across the freeway where the Tobes, the Tobes group owns all of that. That's all been very successful, from what I can see.
Uh-huh.
And I would think that if Goleta had a main drag where people wanted to be and cool, unique retail down there, I think it could be a big hit. But I think until somebody can get a big enough portion of it and kind of start the change, the snowball, so to speak, it's probably not going to change. And then I think the other thing is the city of Goleta, from my experience in seeing things within the city of Goleta, it's a relatively new city.
Yeah.
So they don't have a lot of systems in place like the city of Santa Barbara has. There's not a lot of precedents that they can go off of, and they're kind of trying to find their way as a government too, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably plays into it a little bit.
Exactly. Everything takes time. Everything's the first time. And so they're going to narrow the 4 lanes to 2 and add some parking as a temporary project and see how that works. So we'll see what happens there. But you're right. I mean, Camino Real, it looks like Disneyland some Friday and Saturday nights, is the parking lot is just jam packed, and so it's just interesting to look at the different trends. But Austin,
Well,
go ahead.
The city could do things to change it though, right? I mean, if the city came out and said, it's funny how most of these local governments are so afraid to be pro development. But if they had come out and say, if you buy a property on in Old Town Goleta and you want to rehab it and change it and so forth and put some money into it, then we'll get you a building permit within 3 months.
Yeah.
If the city could be proactive in that way and make it so that people felt comfortable coming in and spending money and developing or repositioning existing product, I think you'd see a lot of guys coming in there. But I think right now the feeling is that the city just really doesn't have any precedents and doesn't really know how to be pro-business.
Yeah. Well, I worked at the San Jose Mercury News for 2.5 years, and they could just look there. They could just talk, because it's a different area, but like the redevelopment of East San Jose, they do something as simple as a facade improvement program, where they allow people to say, hey, if you do this, we'll give you money for this, and it'll look better, if nothing else. But we do have examples of larger city governments working with the businesses to allow them to make investments into their properties with the ideas that they have some government assurance through the planning process. And so we don't really see that. The other side of it is, do those owners want to change? Are they kind of just good how they are? I don't know if you probably don't come out to Goleta, but one of the most popular restaurants here is Pepe's restaurant in Old Town. And they had to close because of the fire. It closed like 1.5 years or something, maybe a little longer, but 2 years they closed. And when they opened up, it's like, you didn't know they were like, it was so busy. It's so jam packed, So I think for a lot of these restaurants, it somehow works, and it may be everything they need, and they don't really care what the rest of the facades look like or the infrastructure, So it's interesting tale of two cities,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, maybe it does need to just stay the way it is too. It's been, I mean, compared to State Street, it's kind of a success right now. There's way less vacancy.
The city should figure out a way. There is way less vacancy for sure. And every time I go to Old Town Coffee, I can't park anywhere. And like, there's nowhere to park. So you have to park on Hollister or park it in the neighborhoods and walk in. And it's always jam packed. So people are figuring it out somehow. City of Goleta should do some little marketing, or like put some little lampposts out there, like Old Town Goleta, like Santa Barbara has, or something that at least draws a little bit of like.
Do they have a farmer's market?
Goleta, Old Town does not. The farmer's market is in Camino Real.
That would be a great, that would be a great thing, is to have a farmer's market and maybe, a concert afterwards or something like that, just to draw people down there.
Yeah.
Those are just little things they could probably do make it more successful.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. The district elections, we're going to end where we started, which is criticizing politicians for slowing everything down. So anyway, Austin, it's always a great pleasure to talk to you. Appreciate you the no BS that I get from you. Just sort of, this is how it is, and I know because I'm in this industry. So I really appreciate you sharing it from that perspective. So thanks a lot for your time, and I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
I'd love to. Thank you, Josh. Always a pleasure.
All right, thank you.